a weekend shooting party, which was quite normal for Harry, and he just thought they'd all get on together, but in fact the opposite.
He could rely, which is in the end where Meghan stepped in. I mean, a needy man met a woman who could help him with his needs. They've got away with too much, and I'm delighted that finally this particular lie has been exposed.
This is the kind of whisper that starts as a rumor in a private room and ends up shaking a palace, because according to explosive claims from royal biographer Tom Bower, a single clause buried deep in a legal document may have quietly rewritten Prince Harry's entire future without him ever realizing it. The allegation? A hidden provision, page 14, clause 7 of a later amendment to their marital agreement, not the original, that supposedly shifts control of brand, business, and media rights in a way that could become devastating if the marriage ever collapsed. And when you line that claim up with certain career moves, financial reshuffles, and PR decisions made over the past few years, supporters of this theory say three things suddenly look less random and more like strategy. First, the reported return of powerhouse PR firm Sunshine Sachs in January 2026, a firm known in industry circles for handling reputational strategy during high-profile celebrity breakups. Second, the quiet build out of separate business structures and trademark filings under Meghan's name starting in 2022. And third, Bower's warning that Harry could allegedly lose control of major joint ventures if that clause functions the way his sources suggest. To be clear, these are claims and interpretations, not court-proven facts, but they've ignited intense debate. Here's why Bower's words travel so fast. He isn't known as a casual blogger tossing out blind items. He built a career digging into powerful figures and publishing deeply sourced biographies that often make headlines for their bluntness. Admirers say he's thorough. Critics say he's controversial. Either way, when he speaks, people listen. Bower's book Revenge reportedly relied on interviews with dozens of people who crossed paths with Meghan at different points in her life and career. Supporters of his work argue that he reconstructs patterns, not just isolated anecdotes. Detractors argue those accounts are one-sided, but the narrative he draws is consistent. Someone extremely careful, detail-oriented, and highly strategic about long-term positioning. And that's where this prenup amendment theory starts to swirl. Most people imagine prenups as simple. Who owns what? How assets split? Maybe support terms. Royal adjacent marriage.
Huge secrets inside Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage.
Marriages, however, come with image rights, titles, branding, and global commercial value layered on top. Add California community property law, which generally splits marital earnings 50-50, and the legal landscape becomes even more complex. According to Bower's interpretation, the amendment in question allegedly did more than define money. It structured control. Control over intellectual property. Control over production companies. Control over future deals. And Meghan, he claims, was listed as a central business manager across multiple ventures, which under certain legal frameworks could give her leverage over rights and revenue streams. Again, these are claims, not confirmed legal findings, but they're the fuel feeding this fire. What makes the story even louder is the timing. The alleged amendment reportedly came after their royal exit, just as massive media contracts were being negotiated. That period was chaotic, new country, new staff, new companies, and life under relentless global attention. In that whirlwind, Bower suggests Harry may not have scrutinized the document as intensely as Meghan allegedly did. People who previously worked with her, Bower claims, described her as meticulous in legal and financial matters. They say she reads line by line, asks questions, and thinks several moves ahead. That doesn't prove anything about this marriage, but it shapes how his sources interpret later developments. Fast forward to 2022, and observers began noticing a shift. More solo ventures, separate trademarks, independent brand launches, Meghan's name appearing alone on certain filings. To fans, that's normal entrepreneurial growth. To skeptics, it looks like financial compartmentalization. Then came the reported re-engagement of Sunshine Sachs. In Hollywood, that firm's reputation is tied to narrative management during reputational storms, especially separations. Industry insiders often say you bring them in before a story breaks, not after. That detail, more than anything, is what makes gossip circles buzz. At the same time, the Netflix deal that once carried a headline figure of $100 million reportedly paid out based on deliverables, not guarantees. Projects were announced, some produced, some scrapped. Bower sources claim the real earnings may have been significantly lower than the publicized maximum. If true, that would make asset structure and ownership even more crucial. By 2022 and beyond, Meghan was launching lifestyle ventures, creative projects, and brand extensions under her own ownership. Supporters say she's building independence. Critics say she's building insulation. Layer that with California residency rules, custody considerations, and property protections, and suddenly every business filing, every PR move, every trademark becomes part of a giant speculative puzzle. Bower's most dramatic claim is that Harry may sense emotional distance but not fully grasp the legal scaffolding beneath him. He suggests the prince is isolated from old support systems and heavily reliant on the very structure that could, in theory, leave him exposed. Again, these are allegations and interpretations fiercely disputed by many, including those close to the couple. But the narrative is gripping because it mirrors a classic Hollywood arc: love story, reinvention, power shift, and the looming question of who really holds the pen when contracts get signed. If the theory is wrong, it's a dramatic misread of two ambitious people building modern careers. If it's right, it's one of the most strategic marital restructurings ever carried out under global scrutiny. Either way, the speculation machine is running hot, and every move from here on out will be dissected like a clue in a mystery novel. And here's where the story stops being just about romance and starts looking, at least through Bower's lens, like a long game of positioning where every move years in advance suddenly matters. Because if page 14, clause 7 really exists the way his sources describe, then the past few years don't look like random career pivots, they look like preparation. Think about the shift after 2020. The royal exit wasn't just emotional, it was structural. Overnight, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle went from institution-backed figures to fully commercial public brands. Every speech, every interview, every project suddenly had market value. And when people become brands, control of that brand becomes power. Bower's interpretation hinges on one core idea: Meghan didn't just participate in the business side, she allegedly anchored it. Her name appearing first on filings, her positioned as a managing force in negotiations, her separate ventures multiplying while joint ones slowed. To supporters, that's a capable woman steering her empire. To critics, it's someone ensuring that if the ship ever splits in two, she sails off with the engine. Look at the pattern gossip watchers point to: solo children's book, solo lifestyle trademarks, solo podcast negotiations, independent teams forming outside the original shared foundation structure. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's paperwork. But paperwork is where power hides. And here's the emotional twist that makes the story sting. Bower suggests Harry moved from prince to partner without fully shifting into businessman mode. He grew up in a system where the institution handled the machinery. Lawyers, courtiers, advisors, the gears were always turning in the background. Suddenly, he's in California, in an industry where contracts are chess moves and silence is strategy. People around him, Bower claims, saw risk. Big deals structured on performance. Expenses tied to image. Loans, mortgages, production costs. But when concerns came up, the narrative reportedly stayed optimistic: build the brand, invest in the future, the payoff will come. That works beautifully, unless the brand ownership isn't evenly split the way you think. And then there's the house. Montecito wasn't just a home, it was a statement. Privacy, independence, a fresh chapter. But property in California during divorce can become a battlefield of valuations, protections, and forced sales. If Bower's sources are right, even the sanctuary could turn into a ledger entry. But the part that hits hardest, the part that fuels the most late-night comment threads, is the children. Stability matters in custody decisions. Primary caregiver status matters. Where the kids are enrolled, who handles daily logistics, who's listed on forms, these are quiet details that carry enormous weight later. Bower's theory suggests those roles were already defined long before any public fracture. So the narrative he paints is chilling. Not a sudden collapse, but a slow tightening. Financial separation first, brand separation next, PR preparation quietly in the background, legal residency boxes checked. Then, when the moment comes, everything moves at once. Critics of this theory say it's dramatic overreach. They argue ambitious women often get framed as calculating while men are painted as naive. They say marriages evolve, careers shift, and not every business move is a secret escape plan. And they're right that none of this has been proven in court. It's interpretation layered on timing, layered on insider claims. But in the court of public fascination, perception is oxygen. Bower's most provocative provocative suggestion is that Harry might only now be realizing how the structure around him is built, that he feels the emotional distance but hasn't fully mapped the legal terrain beneath it, that he trusted love where contracts demanded scrutiny. It's the classic tragedy arc, the prince who left the castle for freedom only to find himself in a different kind of cage made of paperwork instead of protocol. Meanwhile, Meghan's public trajectory looks upward. New ventures, new launches, new positioning in lifestyle and media spaces. Independence reads differently depending on who's telling the story. Empowerment to some, exit strategy to others. And hovering over all of it is Tom Bower, the man connecting these dots and saying this isn't coincidence, it's choreography. He's not predicting emotional drama. He's predicting legal inevitability based on structure already in place. If he's wrong, he becomes another loud voice in the royal rumor ecosystem. If he's right, he becomes a biographer who spotted the ending chapters years before the final page turned. The most unsettling idea he leaves hanging isn't about money, it's about timing. Because in his view, by the time the public sees a headline, the real decisions will already be months old. Signatures long dry, outcomes largely locked. That's how Martin power shifts happen. Not in shouting matches, not in dramatic exits, in filings, in amendments, in quiet rehires of the exact PR team you call when you're preparing the world for a narrative pivot. And the final twist? Harry may still believe he's in a marriage crisis when, legally and financially, he could already be in an endgame he never saw coming. Maybe it's exaggerated. Maybe it's misread. Maybe it's a warning shot from a writer who thrives on dramatic framing. But it's gripping because it blends love, power, trust, and paperwork. The four ingredients behind every high-stakes Martin breakup story. One thing certain, from this point forward, every business move, every solo appearance, every team change will be watched like a clue. Because if Bower's theory holds even a grain of truth, the real story isn't whether a split happens. It's whether it was quietly structured years ago. And that possibility is what makes the whispers so loud.